we're now going to hear about the legals in the USA. So these guys would have all had a legal transfer of parentage in the USA, and Molly O'Brien from International Fertility Law Group in California is going to talk to us about the legal issues here for the US journey, and hopefully she'll talk about some of the current issues as well. So, Molly, let me just bring your video up. Whoops. Thank you for joining us. So, Molly, I'm going to introduce you to you while we're getting a video going.
Sounds great.
She's Molly's worked. I've known her for a long, long time. Hi, nice to see you.
Hi, it's great to see you.
She's got a great background because she's not only a lawyer, but she's worked for an egg donation agency and a surrogacy agency. So she's very familiar with this whole area. She's been an attorney since 2011 and lots of experience as a result in drafting contracts in both the surrogacy space and egg donation and sperm. She's done a lot of work appearing for judges to help people finalise their rights and so forth. Lots of experience in all the documentation you need for clients returning home in the international space. As you can probably work out, Molly's great with international clients. Not all lawyers are good with this, but she's one of them that is great with this. So thank you so much, Molly, for helping out with this webinar. It's really good of you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
That's great. Let me hand over to you, and you can tell us a bit about the legals people should expect.
Excellent. Perfect. So I'm going to do a very high-level overview because the legals are pretty different in every single state in the United States. So I think the most important thing to focus on first is that the US is an ideal place to do your surrogacy because we actually have a legal structure in place that not only protects the parents, but it protects the surrogate mom. So that's why a lot of people come to the United States to do surrogacy. But then within each state in the United States, there's a different set of laws that mean different things that operate different ways. So it's really, really, really crucial that when you're starting your journey, that you start by speaking to an attorney, because we want to make sure that you're matched with a surrogate who lives in a state that is appropriate for you. So that means whether you're a married couple, whether you're single, whether you're gay, straight, trans, whatever your situation is, we want to make sure that it's legally operative. Because the most uncomfortable thing could be if you meet the perfect surrogate, you have a Skype call with her, you fall in love, and then you discover you can't work with her because she lives in a state that just simply won't work for you. So that my biggest piece of advice would be, first, let's make sure that we're looking at states that work for you and that you're matching with a surrogate that's appropriate in that respect. Now, no matter which state you end up working in, the legal structure is very similar in the United States, and it's 2 steps. The first step is going to be a contract between you and your surrogate mother, and we'll talk about that in detail. And then the second step is going to be a parental order or a judgment of parentage or a pre-birth order or a post-birth order. These are all the same kind of name for the same legal structure as you getting your parental rights in the United States. So let's talk about the contract for a second. The contract is going to be different with every agency you work with because agencies have their own protocols and they have their own rules that we should follow. They also have their own payment structures. So when it comes to the financials, the part of the contract will really be dictated by the agency. What you should be looking for in your surrogacy contract financially is that all the financial parts are clear, that there's limits on every category. You don't want to see yourself exposed financially with no limit, either in time or in dollar amount. And the other part of the contract is the more relationship aspects. This is making sure the surrogate is always in medical compliance, making sure that you have constant communication throughout the pregnancy. We want you to feel as involved as you want to be. So the contract should be really clear for you what sort of communication is appropriate between you and the surrogate, like how often. We want to make sure that you are up to date on when medical appointments are happening. If you're able to attend those appointments on Skype or on FaceTime, that's awesome. We want you to be able to do that. So the surrogate has to basically waive her doctor-patient privacy rights so that you can be part of that. We want to make sure that the contract is clear about who's allowed to ask for certain tests during the pregnancy. you'll see a whole section of the contract dedicated to the surrogate's medical insurance, which is one of my favorite things about surrogacy. I know that that makes me questionable, but I do love the surrogacy insurance. You'll see a lot of things dedicated to that because that's a huge piece of the puzzle, is making sure that she has appropriate coverage. Now, in the contract, this needs to be done prior to her becoming pregnant. It is not okay for you to sign a contract after the fact. You really need to do this ahead of time. Each side should have their own lawyer. Review this contract with them. Because later, when it comes time to get your parental rights, we want to be able to, comfortably say to the judge, everybody had a chance to speak to a psychologist, they spoke to a doctor, and they spoke to a lawyer. They knew this agreement that they were entering into. There can be no question about them not having understood it, not knowing what the agreement was, those kinds of things. So this eliminates that risk. So making sure that both sides have attorneys, reviewing the contract with them, explaining the legal rights and obligations. Now, once the contract part is done and everybody signs it, typically at that point, that's when your IVF doctor is going to go ahead and make a calendar for the medications to start to prepare for the second part of the legal process. And this is getting the parental order, that judgment of parentage, etc. Now, if your surrogate resides in a state where it's done post-birth, where it's done after the birth, then the procedure is a little bit different. We will do that all after the birth, the paperwork will be filed, but we prepare it ahead of time. If your surrogate resides in a state where this is done prior to the birth, then we will start preparing these documents kind of around the middle of the pregnancy. Once we've cleared the first trimester is usually a safe time, because at that point we know how many babies you're pregnant with, what the full term due date is, what hospital she expects to deliver at, those kinds of things. These documents are going to be a series of declarations that all of the parties signs, where you as the parents will say, hi, we're the parents, we want to be the parents, we want our names on the birth certificate, and the surrogate, and if she's married, her spouse or partner will sign something that says, we're just the surrogate and her husband or partner. We don't want to be the parents. We signed the surrogacy contract stating that we wouldn't be the parents. We want the parents to be recognized as the parents, that sort of thing. The doctor will sign declarations approving for the court that, in fact, these are your embryos, that they were transferred for this purpose, that the pregnancy caused is not the surrogate's naturally occurring pregnancy, those kinds of things. And of course, the lawyers will submit documents and we'll send a copy of the surrogacy contract. And then the judge reads everything over and goes, yep, this looks like a good surrogacy, everything's good, and you have a signed court order at that point. Now, that signed court order should allow you to get both of your names on the original birth certificate. Again, this is going to be a nuanced thing that is slightly different in every single state, which is why it's really important that whatever your heart and whatever your wishes are, that you speak to a lawyer ahead of time so that your expectations are set, you know what the legal structure is like in the state where the surrogate lives and so forth. Now, Sam had mentioned that he wanted me to talk a little bit about COVID. So one of the things I really want to cover when it comes to any sort of pandemic or thing like this, we're seeing a lot of issues right now where parents are having to plan really, really far in advance in order to get here for the birth. Now, there are exceptions under the United States travel bans that do allow parents to get here. And one of the things that you should ask your lawyer to do, or make sure that you are working with a law firm that can do this for you, is to have some sort of temporary guardianship and or permanent guardianship. And the reason why the guardianship is really important is because if you're here in the United States, but you can't go to the hospital because maybe you're still in your quarantine period and the hospital won't let you in, or if you're trying to get here on time and maybe the baby comes a little bit early, you need to have somebody in place who will take care of your child until you can. And it's not recommended that that person be your surrogate. So it's good to nominate somebody who can step in your shoes, either temporarily or in the unfortunate event if something were to happen to you. We want to make sure that the child goes into the custody and care of the people that you would want. If you don't have documents like this in the United States, the surrogate can't take the child. So that means the child will have to go into the foster care system, be put up for adoption, and that is not what you want. You want the child to go to who you would nominate. So please think about this ahead of time and please talk to an attorney who can do those kinds of documents for you. They should also be able to do a power of attorney where the surrogate gives you rights during the pregnancy to speak to the doctor, to make medical decisions while she's pregnant. And in the unfortunate event something might happen to the surrogate while she's still pregnant, we want to make sure that the promises that she's made to you in that contract are things that are found to be accurate if something happens to her and she can't communicate those promises. So again, it's really good to have some sort of guardianship documents in there. We're finding these incredibly helpful during these COVID times. But if you're about to have a birth and COVID is still around, it is a really good idea to speak to your attorney about 5 or 6 months before the birth and start preparing the documents that will be necessary in order to get you the exception to travel to the United States. Then once you're here, we want to make sure you can get back home with your child. So it's really important that you have a plan in place, that you're talking to your lawyer, that you feel good that they know what to do. I can tell you at our firm, we've helped people from, gosh, I think like 19 different countries so far get here. Everybody I've learned more about immigration than I ever thought I would need to know. But it's really important that you have those discussions so that we can make sure that you're set up for success and that you have what you need. The last thing I kind of really wanted to touch on is medical insurance. Now, not just medical insurance for the surrogate, but you need to be thinking about how you're going to pay for those baby bills. A lot of lawyers don't like to touch this issue. Like I said earlier, I'm a sicko. I love insurance. So you can definitely talk to me. You can talk to your lawyer. You should be able to talk to your lawyer about insurance and how to pay for those baby bills. I also recommend that you speak to a licensed insurance broker so they can talk to you about different options that might be available for you. It is a big risk when you're not a resident of the United States, when you have a child there who may or may not be eligible for insurance. So it's something that you really need to have a plan in place. Maybe not necessarily an insurance plan, but you need to have some sort of structure like, okay, well, if X, Y, and Z happens, we're going to do this. And if A, B, and C happens, this is our plan. That's what I mean by that. So please, please, please communicate early on with your lawyer. Make sure that they're guiding you through all of those things. But that's one of the biggest risks I see that international parents take on. And we can eliminate those risks by planning ahead and having good, thorough discussions from the beginning. So those were the things on my list, Sam. What do you think?
That's great. No, that's really, really handy for people, I think, to think about all those things up ahead of time. So I'm thrilled to have you on board. And I must confess, you guys have been great in helping out some of our parents and get into the USA. So thank you for all your work you and Richard have done in that area in the last few months. It's been terrific to have people who know what they're doing like you guys do.
It's so funny. We had some clients who were at the embassy and they were talking to somebody who's like, we don't know what to do. We need to go because we're having a surrogate. And as soon as they heard surrogate, they perked up and they're like, oh, call our lawyer. So like they called us at the embassy. So it's like one of those like wonderful things where we're getting to learn so much.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, for UK citizens, is there much different in terms of, are they an easier or harder group than other nationals to get?
UK's been really easy to work with. In fact, a lot of Europe has a great structure. Australia's been fine. China, believe it or not, has been really good. At first they were like, we don't know what to do. So we kind of said, well, this is what everybody else is doing. And we gave them the list of documents and they're like, okay, we'll do that. So it kind of worked out in our favor. Sometimes we're needing to get creative depending on where the country of origin is, and sending people to a place where they can quarantine before they come into the United States. So we are having to get a little creative, but that's why we plan ahead.